you're focusing on the lack of playing time, if you're focusing on the lack of good statistics or production, you're just going to continue producing that.
Ardiaga drives one to center. Miller hustling over. Diving catch by Ian Miller. A great catch.
3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 9-Hole Podcast. This is your host, Ian Miller. I hope everybody is having a great day today. Obviously, I have a little bit of a different background behind me. I'm going to try to switch it up a little bit. This is live in New Jersey, the 9-Hole Podcast coming to you. Man, I wanted to talk today about the difference between professionals and amateurs. What makes, professionals so consistent? What makes amateurs not consistent? I wanted to talk about intention. I wanted to talk about attention and how intention follows attention. I wanted to compare and contrast the differences between successful people, successful baseball players, and unsuccessful people, unsuccessful baseball players. And then I just wanted to end on some things about, the brand of baseball that you play. Are you aware of what kind of brand of baseball you are playing? What kind of, brand you are putting out in the way that you produce the results, how you go about your business, all that stuff, and maybe what that says about you. Hopefully, you are aware of what type of brand of baseball you play and how people think about you. So, we're going to start off talking about intent, which is basically what it takes to be successful. Um, Amateurs versus pros, right? Obviously, like there are different things that go into that, but intent is the North Star of every decision. So intention always follows attention, and where attention goes, intention follows. So from a young age, I had intentions of playing a professional sport. I wasn't 100% sure what sport that was going to be. I just knew that I like sports. I was pretty good at them. I was pretty athletic, and so I set my intentions on being the best I could be. So my attention was all over the place in different sports that I was playing. And so as I grew older, I started getting better at baseball, and so I started focusing my attention on maximizing my baseball skills. And so when my attention was set on maximizing my baseball skills, developing my talent, developing my swing, developing, my whole baseball process, my intentions were just that. My intentions followed the practice that I kind of put out, the way I went about my business. There was way more intent behind that. And so with that intent, I developed more skill and I kind of maximized my ability by being more intentional. That is fundamental in maximizing your career, maximizing everything you are doing on the field, being intentional about the work you put in, being intentional about how you go about your business, and maximizing everything that you have. Like I said, intention always follows attention, and where attention goes, intent follows. Right. So if you are attentive on the things that matter, you can set your intent on producing good results. You can set your intent and your actions on maximizing that attention, and production will follow. So, successful athletes and people are intentional about what they do. They tend to ignore distractions and they set intentions, which in turn equals production. So, if you are a successful baseball player or you are a successful person in whatever endeavor you choose to follow, you can probably I could probably look at you and say that you are pretty good at ignoring distractions. You have a process, you have a routine. We've talked about the importance of routine and what it means to have a set routine. Obviously, as you go about your business and as you go about your career, you will learn what works for you and what you need in order to get ready for first pitch 7:05. Successful athletes and people are intentional about what they do and how they go about their business. They ignore distractions, they set intentions, and that in turn equals production. Let's say if you are a baseball player and you are not playing as much as you want. You have a lack of playing time. You are not going about it the right way necessarily in how you go about thinking about it, how you go about preparing for the season. But man, you're pretty caught up on your lack of playing time, man. I understand You don't show up to your season hoping to be the bench player or the fourth outfielder or the fifth infielder, man. But let's just say your season just ended, right? We're rolling into summer, and you are caught up on the lack of playing time. So if you focus on your lack of playing time, man, you're just going to continue producing a lack, right? If you set your focus all on the lack, all on the shit that is going wrong for you, you're going to continue producing it. If you take a step back, if you look at this lack of playing time and you focus on, man, how do I overcome that? How do I set my intentions in a certain way that can maybe overcome this lack of playing time? I've never necessarily dealt with this before, but man, if you are in that point where your season just ended for your school ball, or your school team, whether you're middle school, high school, whatever it is, and you're about to roll into your summer league, if you're focusing on the lack of playing time or your lack of good statistics that you had in your school team, you're going to roll into your summer ball team focusing on that lack. You're going to just continue producing that lack. If you are caught up in the lack of results or the lack of playing time, you're going to continue producing that because where your attention is at, your intention follows. So if you're continuously caught up on the lack of playing time, the lack of statistics, the lack of production, you're going to continue focusing on it, and your intentions are going to continue being around all of that lack. You're going to continue producing that lack of whatever you're thinking about. So if you focus on lack, you're going to continue producing it. Lack of playing time. Man, instead of setting your attention on that lack of playing time, you need to set your attention on becoming a starter. How do you become a starter? What is that going to feel like, man? What's that going to be like when you show up and you see your name written up in the starting lineup? Set your attention there, right? And then your intentions will follow that. So if you set your attention on becoming a starter, right, you're probably going to go about your business being a starter. Your intentions are going to line up with that. The way that you practice, the way that you take batting practice, the way that you self talk, the way that you think about yourself, man, that positive self talk is everything, right? If you're focusing on the lack of playing time, if you're focusing on the lack of good statistics or production, you're just going to continue producing that. Like I said, where attention goes, intention follows, then production, right? So set your intentions, set your attention on being a starter, man. Start thinking about that, start focusing on that, and your attentions will line up with that stuff, man. So if you're focusing on your lack of hitting 300 for your school team and you're just dead set on that, that's all you can think about, man. It's just woe is me. Fuck, I didn't hit 300. Well, we're about to roll into summer, man. We're already in summer, right? Whether you're playing Legion or it's travel ball or it's just, Little League. Dude, if you're caught up still on your terrible or subpar, whatever it is, lack of statistics type of season that you just got done with, what do you think you're going to produce as you go into your summer ball season? Stop thinking about the lack. Stop thinking about what's going wrong. Stop thinking about what has gone wrong in the past and set your attentions on being a starter. Set your intentions on having, a positive season this year, right? Where your attention goes, your intentions will follow, and then, man, production comes from that. So don't get caught up on the lack. Think about what you want, and your intentions will follow. That is important, man. So comparing and contrasting successful people, successful players with unsuccessful people or unsuccessful players. Let's talk about it, man. So successful people are obviously hyper focused on intention and they ignore distraction. Let's think about 300 hitters. Let's think about all-stars, man. They are hyper focused. They have a process. They have a routine. They're caught up in intent. They are going about their work in a certain manner to be an all-star or be a 300 hitter. Their cage work, their routine pregame, right? Whether it's flips or it's BP on the field, man, they're intentional in their rounds, they're intentional in their work, and they're producing those results. They're producing that 300 batting average, they're producing that all-star season. Unsuccessful people, on the other hand, unsuccessful players, man, they're hyper focused on distraction and they ignore intention. So they're going about their day left and right. They're getting distracted, whether it's playing cards, whether it's shooting pool, playing ping pong in the clubhouse. You're on your phone scrolling, doing the death stroll on TikTok or Instagram, all that stuff, man. I get it. But you are letting distractions kind of consume you and take you about your business, take you away from what you're supposed to be doing. We talk about the importance of having a routine. We'll get into it a little bit more, man. But Um, Jason Kipnis came on the Nine Hole podcast this past week and talked about the importance of routine. He was the type of dude that would go into a clubhouse or go into a weight room and just start attention everywhere. Attention's everywhere, right? He starts doing, he wanted to do some shoulder mobility stuff, right? And then all of a sudden he's grabbing the dumbbells and he's doing a lower body workout just because like that's what's cool to him. He'd workout ADHD, he called it, right? So if you don't set your intentions, right? If you're not hyper focused on your intentions, distractions are just going to come in and they're just going to take you every which way. They're going to get you off of your game. They're going to get you away from your routine. They're going to get you away from your process, and you're just going to continue to produce lack, right? So that's the importance of routine as well when we talk about being hyper focused and being intentional. Yeah, exactly. That's why routine is important. As we continue to dive into this comparing and contrasting of professionals and amateurs, man, we talk about amateurs practicing until they can get it right, right? So if we want to break down a specific mechanic, if we want to break down why do these guys get so good at a baseball swing, how come the best players in the world can turn their brain off and just have a productive swing or a great mechanical swing or a great motion or a great pitching delivery? How can they do that? And that's because behind the scenes, they're building this, they are practicing it until they can't get it wrong, right? So amateurs, they practice until they get it right. They'll grind, man, and they'll until they can do it. They take a round or a couple swings where it's like, okay, this mechanic's right, this batting, this swing is right, this pitching motion's right. Then shut it down, man. Hopefully, I can bring it into the game tomorrow and I'll be able to get it right. Where as professionals, they bust their ass and they grind until they can't get it wrong. It's not necessarily, you're trying to learn a brand new mechanic and you go through the motions and you just do it a couple times, you get it right, and then call it quits, man. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong, until it's muscle memory, until they can do it subconsciously without even thinking. Unconsciously is probably the better word there. Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. That is big time. That is big time. That is important to understand. So, how do you develop that certain skill? How do you develop a certain mechanic? How do you develop a certain motion? We've talked about it here before. But these guys that are professionals versus these guys that are amateurs, they develop a certain skill by putting in time, effort, repetitions. And the easy equation for this is volume times time equals skill. So let's say you want to develop a great swing. You want to develop a great pitching motion and you want to develop that and you want to have that skill that is better than your competitors, man. As we go from the minor leagues or, little league to college to the minor leagues to the big leagues, like we're always trying to separate. We're always trying to stand out. We're always trying to maximize what we have and maximize our ability. How do we do that, man? We do that by developing a better skill than our competitors, the people that we are trying to go up against, the people that are trying to take our spots or we're trying to take their spots. It's all about skill, man. How do you develop that? Volume times time equals skill. So let's say, man, you're trying to take somebody's spot. Let's say you are the second baseman. You were starting last year, but somebody came into this team, and now they're going to be the starting second baseman. If you want to take that spot, man, how are you going to be able to take that spot from your competitor, somebody that's taken it from you? You're going to have to develop a better skill than them at that position, whether that is offensively or defensively. And so let's say it's fielding ground balls. You want to be able to field that position better than your competitor. You want to win that spot back. So how do we use this equation, this volume times time equals skill equation, to determine who gets that spot? Well, let's say, man, you put in 90 minutes a day on infield practice at second base. That's an hour and a half. And let's say your competitor puts in 60 minutes a day. That's an hour. So that's more time. You're putting in more time a day than your competitor who is fighting for that second base spot with you. Now, you do that 7 days a week, whereas your competitor only does that 5 days a week. Now you're putting in more volume than your competitor. So if you were putting in 90 minutes a day, 7 days a week, you were putting in more volume and more time than your competitor, who is only putting in 60 minutes a day and is only going about it 5 days a week. That in turn is going to develop a better skill than your competitor. If you want to take that fucking spot away from that guy that is taking your spot, that has your spot, volume times time equals skill. You need to put in more time, you need to have more sessions, and you need to develop a better skill than that guy that has your spot. That's how you do it. You practice more, you go about it more times, and you eventually develop a better skill than that guy, and you take your spot back. That is how it works. So let me flip the page over here. So as we talked about the the amateurs versus the professionals, man, it is important that uh, obviously the equation, the volume times time equals skill equation, uh, comes out like full bar. The higher that you go up, the more advanced these players get, the more time that they spend behind the scenes on refining their skill, refining their craft, but also the competition that you go up against gets better the higher that you go up. So amateurs, as we kind of talk about this volume times time equals skill thing, amateurs spend 4 to 6 times more competing than they do preparing. Professionals spend 4 to 6 times more preparing than they do competing. So what does that mean? What does that look like in the game of baseball, man? So let's compare and contrast what an amateur does versus what a professional does in the game of baseball. So let's say you're an amateur baseball player, man. You might have two baseball games a week. Let's say a game is 2 to 3 hours long. You have two games a week. That might be like 4 to 6 hours. Um, yeah, you have two games, 2 to 3 hours per game, man. That might be 4 to 6 hours that you are playing, right? But that same amateur might only spend 1 to 2 hours behind the scenes perfecting their craft, whether it's pregame, whether it's practicing throwing, practicing hitting, whether it's a team sanctioned practice or whether it's you're grinding a little bit behind the scenes, man. An amateur will spend 4 to 6 times more competing than they do preparing. Professionals, on the other hand, like I said, spend 4 to 6 times more preparing than they do competing. So, what does this look like? So, let's say a major league baseball player or a minor league baseball player plays 5 to 6 games per week. In the minor leagues, I believe in AAA, you have one off day that is scheduled per week, and in the big leagues, off days are obviously sporadic. But professionals, man, let's say the game is at 7:05 first pitch. Professionals, major league players, minor league players, they will show up to the field early around noon, probably 1:30 at the latest, and they'll spend 5 to 6 hours grinding behind the scenes, preparing, whether it is doing their routine in the cage, on the field, taking early ground balls, taking early batting practice, early anything, man. Whether you're throwing, whether you're getting a workout in, whether you're getting your hot cold tub in, they will spend 5 to 6 hours pregame just preparing. Then you go into the game, you compete for about 2 to 3 hours. Then once the game's done, you have to do your post game stuff, right? Hot, cold tub, contrast, get your work in the training room, right? If you need to get some work done on your leg, on your hamstring, whatever that is, you need to break down some film, man, that's also a couple more hours. So amateurs will spend 4 to 6 times more competing than they do preparing, whereas professional baseball players will spend 4 to 6 times more preparing than they do competing. And that is how you become a professional, right? It reverts back to that equation that we just talked about. Volume times time equals skill. Amateurs are spending 4 to 6 times more competing and not putting in as much volume and time, whereas professionals have to put in that volume and that time to develop that skill. Um, so professionals spend 4 to 6 times more preparing than competing. My dog is throwing up right at my feet as we speak. That's crazy. So, like I said, Jason Kipnis, man, was on the podcast this week, and he talked about how to stand out in a world of flash. So everybody's bat flipping and shit nowadays. Everybody is loud. Everybody's playing with emotion, and I get it. That's not a bad thing. But when it takes away from how you play the game, when the focus is on how high the bat flip is as opposed to how hard you're running down the first baseline, we have a problem. So Jason Kipnis came on. He was talking about how to stand out in a world of flash, and he said, "Man, whereas everybody's kind of flashy nowadays, the player that stands out is the guy that does the fundamentals the right way. So if you can go about doing the fundamentals the right way, go about um, catching and throwing the right way, throwing the ball to the guy's chest, running hard, hitting the cutoff man, making the routine plays, being a dude that can be penciled into the lineup every day, and you're able to be like counted on, right? You're reliable. Man, those are the dudes. Jason Kipnis called it everyday eddies. Those are the guys that stand out nowadays in today's game, where everybody's worried about fucking doing triple axle bat flips, all that good stuff, right? In a world of flash and neon pink arm sleeves with the bright yellow cleats, man, I get it, right? It's cool to play with emotion. It's cool to fire up your dugout and your teammates and stuff. But when it takes away from what type of baseball you're playing, that's where we get in trouble. We'll jump into your brand of baseball, what it says about you next, man. But Kipnis really put an emphasis on finding what works. Obviously, Jason Kip had a different kind of setup where he had the bat down like this. He said, "Man, if that's what helps you hit 300, if that's what helps you become a two-time All-Star in the big leagues, find what works, do it, stick to it." If something might not look flashy or catchy, might not look like it makes you stand out, but it helps you go about your business and produce, man, do it. Find what works for you, because the higher you go up in the game, man, the harder the pitchers you're going to face, the harder the batters you're going to face, the harder the skill level is, and man, the harder it is to produce positive results. Find what works, and find what works early. That is important. Another thing that he talked about is knowing that you belong, man. So as you go about your business, from the minor leagues to the major leagues, from the little leagues to the big leagues, however you want to say it, you are always going to say, "Hey, man, I heard about these guys. I heard about high A baseball players, man. High A is serious." Well, you get there and 10, 15 games in, man, you show out and you're like, "Okay, I belong." Then you make your the next trip to double A, you're like, "Oh shit, I heard about these dudes. They're serious." You find out you belong. You start playing well, you belong. And then you get to triple A in the big leagues, and it's about knowing you belong. So it's important to find what works early. It's important to stick with that and be tried and true with that, man. And eventually you'll be able to produce great results. So stand out by doing the simple stuff, stand out by making the routine plays, by being an everyday Eddie, being accountable, going about baseball the right way, playing hard, man, hard nosed, gritty baseball, finding what works, and having confidence in knowing you belong, regardless of the level you're at. So, man, when we talk about the brand of baseball that you play, obviously, like some players, because they haven't been around long enough, they might not be conscious of what brand of baseball they play and what that says about them, right? What it says about their character and how they go about their process and how they go about their baseball career. Are you aware of the brand of baseball you play and what that says about you? Because it speaks volumes to who you are as a person, let alone a player. So in 2019, man, I was the oldest guy in minor league spring training. I was 27 years old in minor league spring training, again in a sea of teenagers and young 20-year-olds. Man, I was repeating minor league spring training again, and I played baseball a certain way. So my brand was gritty and hard nosed. Man, I would dive headfirst into first base. I'd try to get a double on everything. Ground ball through the six hole. I'm rounding first base hard, man. Those guys have to stop me as I make my way to second base. You know what I mean? I'm always trying to take an extra base. I'm always trying to play hard. I'm always trying to go about my business the right way. So my brand of baseball was obviously gritty and hard nosed, but I also had a title or a label on me from the brand of baseball I played that I lacked offensive production. So here I was, a 27-year-old, the oldest guy in minor league spring training again, and I needed to kind of switch my brand up a little bit. I needed to go about my business a certain way in order to create offensive production. So, man, in the newsletter, I talked about it a little bit, but man, that 2019 spring training, I would hit until my fucking hands bled. And I went about it. I refined my mechanics. I broke down my swing. I built it back up, and I built my offensive production up, and I built my brand of baseball up. I rebranded myself as a dude that could bang. I could go out there and I could hit double digit home runs and steal double digit bags. And I ended up making it to the big league. So I really took focus on what my brand of baseball was and what my brand of baseball said about me, not only as a player, but as a human being, what my character was. And I really took that to heart. I say that because I went through my entire career with players that were way better than me, that deserved a call up more than me, that were way more talented, way more athletic, could hit the ball way farther, could put the barrel on the ball way more consistently, but they didn't make it. They didn't make it out of high A. They didn't make it out of rookie ball. They didn't make it out of A ball. Why is that? Well, man, I played with first rounders that were extremely entitled and extremely soft. And so when they got hit by a pitch or they had a scrape on their knee from fucking sliding into second base, they would come out, right? That's just the brand of baseball that they played. That's the brand of baseball that they went about producing on the field, and that's what it said about them. What does that say to a major league organization? What does that say to a major league manager? What does that say to a front office? Like, this guy's soft. This guy plays for himself. It is what it is. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of teams that don't want that in an organization or on their major league team. That's why you see these guys fizzle out even when they sign for multi-million dollars. I've also seen players that were, immature and selfish. So we talk about guys that are extremely loud, that don't play the game the right way. It's just kind of like a show, like, hey, look at me wearing brake cleats and flashy gear and stuff that doesn't match the team colors, jogging down to first base, just kind of showing out, right, catching the ball the wrong way, just trying to be loud, right, bat flipping, just not running hard, man. Those are selfish. That's immature. Major league managers, major league organizations do not want those types of players on their team. They don't want that on the field representing their organization. So I've seen players that were way better than me, that were just extremely loud, extremely flashy, that weren't team oriented, that were all about themselves, their numbers, their stats, and how they looked on the field, that they just got cut at the end of the season or at the end of the series or at the end of the month. Man, they didn't make it out of double A just solely because they didn't go about playing the game of baseball the right way. What did their brand of baseball say about them? It said that they are selfish, they're immature, they're lazy, they're soft. And I'm not saying that if you're hurt that you should play through it because you're soft. Man, there's a difference between playing through an injury and playing through a boo-boo. You can play through one, you can probably, injure yourself even further playing through the other, right? So you get hit by a pitch, man, get back out there. You scrape your knee up from sliding, get back up there, man. You don't need to come out. Coaches don't want those guys, and organizations do not want those guys on their teams that are all about themselves, all about their stats, all about their personal image. So we talk about it right now. It's like, man, why is Trevor Bauer not in a major league uniform? Why aren't certain guys not in a major league uniform? Man, it's a lot of it has to do about themselves. You see it all the time, man. It's about getting likes, it's about getting views, it's about getting shares, and man, organizations don't want that shit. So, man, I get it, but you need to be aware of what type of brand of baseball you're putting out and what that brand of baseball in turn says about you and your character. Like I said, there is a difference between playing through an injury and playing through a boo boo. One can aggravate, the problem further and leave you out longer than necessary had you, been attentive and addressed the injury up front. And then the other one is just detrimental. You have to play through a boo boo, man. You have to play through a boo boo. There's no point in coming out if you get hit in the elbow by a pitch, man. If you can still throw, you can still play. There's a difference between playing through an injury and playing through a boo-boo. There's also a difference between playing the game the right way and playing the game the wrong way. There's also a difference between hitting 300 and not hitting 300. And it all kind of goes back to being intentional, going about things the right way. You can look at somebody right off the bat and say, okay, this guy's soft. You can look at somebody right away by seeing what type of brand of baseball they put out, and you can say, hey, this guy goes about playing the game the right way, or he does not go about playing the game the right way. Whether he hustles, he's a good teammate, he picks his boys up, he's attentive, or is he all about himself, man? Is he a fire everybody up when he gets a base hit or a home run, or does he pout when he gets out or he strikes out, man? Um, I don't know if you're aware of what your brand of baseball says about you, but I had to play that the right way in order to get to the big leagues. I want to make sure that you understand the difference between that stuff. And lastly, man, I leave off with this. So there's obviously we talk about what are the different ways of becoming a 300 hitter. How do you become a 300 hitter? Let's say you just finished the season and man, you hit 220. You'd love to hit 300. Who wants to hit three? Who wants to hit 220, dude? Nobody. Nobody wants to hit 220. Well, how do you take that 220 season and how do you come into being a 300 hitter. You have to become the 300 hitter, man. You can't just be a 220 hitter and hit 300. If you were the type of dude that hits 220, there's no way in hell you can expect to hit 300. You need to become the type of person that can hit 300. You need to start being intentional about your practice, about your work, about your process, about your routine, about your mindset, how you think about it, how you go about your practice, man, what kind of teammates you are. And you need to become that hitter. You need to become that player that is capable of delivering a 300 performance. Become more than you've been. You'll do more than you've done. And then you'll have more than you had. Let me say this one more time to end. Become more than you've been. You'll do more than you've done, and you'll have more than you've had. I appreciate everybody for tuning in here to the Nine Hole Podcast, man. This has been a great guest episode here in North New Jersey. We will catch everybody here again tomorrow. Man, I'll have Nick Deeney on the podcast. Actually, no, it's Monday, dude. So I'll catch you guys in 2 days on Wednesday. Take care, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in.